Welcome to our analysis. We've all been there, right? You want to discuss something online, but suddenly the tone gets nasty and the comments turn hateful. But what if the best response to that isn't more hate, but solid knowledge? That's exactly what we're looking at today, how well-crafted educational videos can be a powerful tool against extremism and toxicity online.
So we've broken this down into 6 parts. We're going to start with the problem we all know too well, the digital minefield, and then we'll work our way step by step to a surprisingly effective solution, education itself.
All right, to really get the solution, we first have to understand the problem. So let's step into that digital minefield and ask ourselves, why do online discussions go off the rails so often?
Let's kick things off with a question I think every single one of us has asked at some point. Why is it so incredibly exhausting to have a reasonable discussion online? You know, you start talking about a topic, and just a few clicks later, you're knee-deep in personal attacks.
This really sums it up perfectly. The tone online is often deliberately exaggerated and polarizing. Instead of arguments, you get dismissive comments, personal attacks, and straight-up provocation. This is the kind of communication culture that creates the perfect breeding ground for hate.
And this aggressive tone really shows up in one key place, language. So in our second section, that's what we're going to zero in on. Because online, language is often used as a weapon, specifically to turn a simple exchange into an all-out confrontation.
Here you can see the direct contrast. On one side, you've got that typical online tone. It relies on shortcuts, inflammatory remarks, and emotional escalation, all designed to provoke. And on the other side, you have the language of education, precise, explanatory, and factual, with the goal of creating understanding. These are two completely different worlds with totally different aims.
And this leads to a critical point. The language we use online is never neutral. It shapes how we think, and it sets a standard, especially for younger people. It's always an example, for better or for worse.
So, if aggressive language is the problem, then we need a countermodel. And that brings us to Section 3, the search for a new, constructive voice that can serve as a positive example for factual communication.
So what does this positive model look like? Well, the best analogy is that of a good teacher. The communication is polite and clearly structured. The focus is on explaining, not lecturing. Precision replaces polemics, and the underlying tone is always respectful. This attitude creates an atmosphere where learning can actually happen.
And that's the core of it right there. It's not enough just to present facts. The way we communicate, the attitude behind it, teaches just as much. It shows that you can talk about difficult topics calmly and rationally.
This respectful attitude is the foundation for what really matters, good arguments. In Section 4, we're going to look at their power and explore why understanding someone is so much more important than just steamrolling them with your own opinion.
Okay, this might sound a little academic, but the idea of discourse ethics from Jürgen Habermas is basically a user's manual for fair discussions. The central idea is simple. The better argument wins, not the person who shouts the loudest or gets the most likes.
But how do you even spot a good argument? Well, Habermas gives us 4 criteria you can use like a checklist. First, is it understandable? Is the point clear? Second, is it true? Do the facts check out? Third, is it right? Are the values it's based on reasonable? And fourth, is it sincere? Does the person actually mean it? A real dialogue is only possible when all these boxes are ticked.
So if we start arguing this way, what happens to all the hate online? Well, this brings us to a really fascinating point in Section 5. This structured approach actually works like a filter that actively weakens extremism and hate speech.
And here's the crucial insight. Extremist ideologies and hate speech can only survive through massive oversimplification. They need simple scapegoats and black and white thinking to function. Look at this comparison. They're completely incompatible. Extremism relies on creating enemies, emotional manipulation, and simplification. Education, on the other hand, relies on arguments, explanation, and nuance. An educational approach systematically starves extremism of the very things it needs to survive.
And here's an interesting side effect for our current times. This focus on quality and real arguments also acts as a filter against all that superficial, AI-generated content, what people are calling AI slop, that's flooding the internet with meaningless fluff. All of this brings us to our conclusion in the 6th and final section, education as the answer.
because this is about so much more than just learning videos. This is about making an active contribution to a better, healthier digital society.
This is the central thesis. The impulse to respond to hate with even more anger is understandable, but it's often a dead end. A much more powerful response is to counter hate with calm, fact-based, and well-structured education.
This quote from the source material just nails it. It's a clear statement. Real arguments carry more weight than insults, and trying to understand something has a much more lasting impact than a cheap provocation.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? I'd like to leave you with one final question. What if our best weapon against hate isn't just shouting louder, but creating smarter, more accessible, and better education? Now that's something worth thinking about.